Welcome to the ICBE Advanced Productivity Skillnet Lunchtime Bites webinar. My name is Aidan Kelly, and for those of you who don't know me, I manage the Advanced Productivity Skillnet. Today's topic is the 5 new imperatives for successful innovation leadership that will help individuals and organizations innovatively respond to opportunities and challenges brought about by COVID-19, rapid advancements in technology, new ways of working, and ever-increasing market demands. For today's webinar, we've taken a slightly different approach in that it is a panel discussion rather than a presentation. Chaired by Padraig Broderick of Transitions Optical, a long-standing and valued ICBE member company, we have a panel of experts that will guide you through these 5 principles. Before I hand you over to Padraig, just a little bit of housekeeping. This session is being recorded and will be on the ICBE website and the Tangent website. If you have questions during the presentation, please post them to the chat function and they will be picked up on by Padraig, who will direct them then to the panel in the Q&A at the end. And there may also be an opportunity to ask your questions verbally, but please raise your hand before you do so. And in the interest of best engagement, you may keep on your camera if you wish. So Padraig, over to you for introductions and discussion. I hope you all enjoy and benefit from this webinar.
Thanks, Aidan. Thanks very much for that. And I suppose we're delighted, and thanks for the opportunity for me to be able to chair today. And delighted to be, I suppose, have a number of experts to talk on a topic which is a very hot topic at the moment, I suppose, and given all the challenges everybody has faced. So I suppose just to give a brief intro myself, as Aidan said, I've been working with Transitions Optical and Tume for a long time. Background in operations, global quality, and been in HR and global L&D and talent for a number of years now. So a huge vested interest in this topic, and particularly the modules that we're going to talk about today. And I suppose just to give it a context and an overview and a flow for what's going to happen. So I'll just give a brief introduction, then we'll introduce the panel, and so they can introduce themselves, and then we'll go on, and each of the panel will talk about each topic for a few minutes, and then we'll post questions, or we'll host the questions at the end. So if you have questions, please post them, as Aidan says, into the chat, and then we'll have a live interactive discussion towards the latter stages of the webinar. So with that in mind, I'll just kick off in terms of, and I suppose looking at an intro, and I suppose during a time when change is only constant, organizations today are facing an accelerated need to become more agile and creative and to stay ahead. New business modules, new ways of working, and new market demands require a new leadership approach and company culture. One that puts collaborative innovation at its core. Leaders need to inspire and motivate new ways of thinking through an inclusive approach and quickly rise to the challenges and opportunities. So how do leaders achieve this, and what characteristics makes a successful leader that can navigate through change? Lead with positivity, innovate for growth, and what skills and behaviours should today's executives adopt? What outputs should they aim to deliver? How do they know how they're on the right path? And I suppose just during this webinar, as I mentioned, we have 5 key topics to talk about. So before we go on to that, I'd like the panel to introduce themselves, and maybe we'll start off with Ken, please.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Ken Finnegan. So today I have the great pleasure of introducing myself as, yes, the CEO of Tangent, but also I'm a past student from Exec Breakout. So delighted to be discussing kind of like the impact the course has had on my professional career, but also to talk about innovation and entrepreneurship from a Tangent perspective.
Perfect. Thank you, Ken. So just moving on to maybe Louise.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Louise Andrews and I work with Ken, and I'm the program manager with Tangent, which means I get to do lots of fun things. I design and I develop, and I also deliver on a suite of innovation training for both professional and academic upskilling. I'm also super excited to be part of the program, the Executive Breakout program, because I'm a certified personal leadership and executive coach, in addition to being a corporate wellbeing coach. And I guess what I'll be bringing to the program is that my manifesto is that I really want to help you guys transform yourselves into the best version of yourselves.
Excellent. Thank you, Louise. And Jonathan, yourself?
Thank you. I'm Jonathan Banister, and I started a company called Make Happy, which is a facilitation and innovation agency about 10 years ago. I've been lucky enough to work with Tangent over the last 4 years, and over the last 3 months, we've been running some courses across the university on collaboration in a remote world. And I'm going to be running the section on the masterclass around design thinking and how your approach to problem solving can really affect everything.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. And Jonathan joins us from London, so delighted, Jonathan, you can be with us today. Okay, so I suppose just to move it forward in terms of get into the meat of things. So the first thing is really we're going to talk about the topics, and the first one really is a design mindset. And I suppose when you think of design mindset, you know, what are we doing? Searching for solutions and to complex problems, creating, exploring, and finding meaningful purpose, I suppose, with a human-centric approach. And when I think about, maybe, Jonathan, you might take the 3 minutes and discuss give us your insights into this topic, please.
And I think, well, thank you for that. And I think actually the way you set that up is absolutely key. It is about putting the customer first, about really trying to understand and empathize with the person who has the problem. Now, it does beg the question of why you would ever approach solving a problem for people without understanding what makes people tick. But it never ceases to amaze me how many people go, okay, we think we can do this, and off they go. They design a product or an app, and they've never spoken to people. And I think that's the bit that I want you to be like magpies. My great mentor, who was a strategist called Jackie Dickens, said that the great design thinkers were like magpies. They constantly looked at people and picked up insights about them, about what makes them tick. Bring people to the heart of your process. And it's not just understanding people at the beginning, what is the problem that they have. As you start to design your solution, are you involving the people you're designing the solution for as part of that design process? How can you bring them into the heart of what you want to do? I think there's a couple of other things that's worth adding about a design thinking mindset, a design mindset, is that you need to be curious. Yeah, you just need to love people and what makes people do what they do. Why do people say one thing and then do another? How can you understand that? You want to have a bias to action. You need to be sort of moving the problem forward the whole time. The most powerful word in a sort of question in design thinking, and I think I've got a minute left, so I know I'm on time, but the most powerful thinking question I think you can ask is to reframe every problem as a how might we or a how might I question. That act of reframing problems moves you from blocking, from sort of closing everything down to much more about divergent thinking. It's also just about being aware of everything. And finally, I think it's about radical collaboration. When you're working in teams, and I know I've got a bit on this in a bit, later on in this chat, talking about collaboration, but diversity of thought leads to better ideas. If you just sat down and on your own tried to solve everything, you're never going to do as well as working with somebody who might view the world completely the opposite way to you. So hopefully, I think my clock's just hit me at 3 minutes, saying stop. That gives you, and you can see I'm passionate about this. I just love bringing people to the heart of everything.
Excellent, Jonathan. Yeah, I think that's a topic that certainly appeals to me, and I'm sure it appeals to many of the people on the webinar today. And it's a topic we could talk about all day, because where you start and where you finish in terms of bringing people on that journey is certainly an incredible story. And I'm sure we get loads of questions. Thanks, Jonathan, for that. And I suppose bringing that forward, what do you need? You need to be, I suppose, an ambassador for change. And when we think of that, fostering a culture of innovation, and how do we do that? So maybe Ken, you might take us through what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love this idea of radical collaboration. Jonathan's point of having diversity within teams. Everybody needs to go on this journey. It's not just for engineers, or it's not just for accountants. It's like the more minds and people you can bring to the table, the more radical the innovation can be. So look, I think like from an ambassador for change perspective, I'm going to give maybe a little bit of background in terms of, as a past pupil, what motivated me to participate on this course. And it was I guess I was the ambassador for change. I worked in IDA Ireland. I was the chief technologist in IDA Ireland. And part of my role there was to meet with organizations and inspire them to innovate, you know, to demonstrate kind of like the opportunity. It's like we've all heard that phrase, innovate or die, right? So it's like the world is changing. There's disruptive technologies, there's aging demographics, the healthcare system is changing, et cetera. And if we stay stationary, like it's not good. We need, as organizations, and we need as people, to develop ourselves and be those ambassadors to kind of like present the vision of what the future can look like, and not just present the future, but also to be able to articulate what that vision looks like, be able to bring the diversity of thinking, be equipped with the tools to lead that transformation, and also kind of garner new ideas. You know, it's like, again, coming back to this idea of radical collaboration, everybody has ideas, you know, so how do we harvest all those ideas? How do we find them? How do we then frame them from an organizational perspective? How do we get buy-in from them? Is there a business case there? So it's kind of like there's a lot of soft skills and there's a lot of hard skills in terms of being an ambassador, if you want, in terms of implementing change. And I guess, as I said, that was my motivation when I was in IDA, was to work with companies in Ireland to kind of like go on that innovative journey. From my perspective, looking in at organizations as well, you know what, innovation itself is a language. So participating on courses like these, we begin to speak the same language. You know, it's like if you work in the medical sector or the engineering sector, there's a certain language that needs to be spoken as well. So I find working with organizations that put innovation at the heart of their culture and individuals that were innovative, it was I guess more compelling for organizations, or more compelling for IDA to work with organizations like that. So if there's an innovation and desire within your organization and within you, this course is perfect to help drive that narrative and drive innovation within your culture, and for you to be the ambassador of change.
Excellent. Thanks, Ken. And I suppose, you know, to bring that forward, you know, you need collaboration and co-creation. And to do that, you have to be able to bring the people on the journey. They have to be on board, they have to be invested, and they have to have an intent and a desire to be there. And I suppose, Jonathan, when we think of that, you know, what can make that happen? What do you believe are the key nuggets that are driven by that?
Well, I'll go back to one of the things that Ken just said, is that I think everybody needs to be an ambassador for change, for collaboration. And I'm sure there's people out there who, that's my camera, I will come back, sorry. You know, I'm sure people out there have been in meetings where they've had somebody who goes, oh, that's not what we do around here. Or, oh, that's going to cost too much money. Or, oh, Jonathan, you always give us that idea, who suck the energy out of the meeting, who suck the energy out of the process. And there's other people that you want to have in your meeting because you know if they come, they're just going to be sparking on ideas. And I think that the role of the leader, and what I hope you will get out of coming on, you know, on this, you know, on this program, is that understanding of how do you create an environment which is safe, an environment where people feel comfortable about putting an idea out. I was running a workshop the other day and someone said to me, can we anonymize all the post-it notes? And I said, yes, I'm sure we can do that. We were doing an online workshop. And I then sort of said, why? And they said, well, I'm a bit nervous about putting my ideas forward. You know, why would you want to be nervous about putting your ideas forward if, as a group, you've agreed that we are going to co-create this? If I put an idea forward, I want Ken or Louise to take my idea and to try and make it better, to mash it up with something that's already happened. And that is the thing about co-creation. A lot of this goes back to, and for those of you who've ever been in my workshops, I mention her or not, an American mathematician called Dr. Ruth Nolan. And she came up with an equation for creativity, and that creativity is the sum of the knowledge you have. How knowledgeable are you? And it's not just sector knowledge. Are you one of those people that goes out there and is just interested in the world? How good are you at imagination, at developing ideas? And some of us, our energy goes up when we develop ideas. You can probably guess that's me. And how good are you at evaluating? And that's taking those ideas and putting them together and making it better. Some of us, our energy goes up there. Mine doesn't, actually. My E-score, I have to, my evaluation, I have to work really hard with. But the other thing that Ruth Nola put into her equation, how am I doing for time? Shout at me if I'm overrunning, was A, and that was your attitude. And she said that the key bit of creativity, and I think collaboration and co-creation is rooted in creativity and how you approach it. And that's the A. That is the A in that equation. So very nice little post on Wiki if you want to know more about Ruth Nola, but it's about what you bring and how you make your team safe. I'll now pass on.
Thank you, Jonathan. I hate to interrupt you in full passionate flow because it's so passionate. It's something you can't, infectious. You can't stop it. So thank you for that. And just that leads on nicely to the next, I suppose, topic there is paving the way. You know, removing those barriers, secure your and stakeholder buy-in, and how do you do that? And maybe Louise, you might give us an insight into that, please.
Thanks a million, Porrick. Yes, indeed. And I think ideas are absolutely wonderful, aren't they? But they're no good unless they're implemented and they're actioned. So I think the thinking is that the biggest barrier to transformation, it's usually nothing to do with the process or technology. Indeed, it's more steeped in people and the culture. So sometimes adopting in and designing collaborative programs within the organization, such as ambassador programs, working groups into the organization, this can really help pave the way. It'll help to dispel barriers, improve internal comms. It'll certainly enhance employee confidence, and generally it's going to facilitate that stakeholder management piece and buy-in. But guys, Jonathan and Ken have spoken about ambassadors, and these are really powerful people. And when we think of ambassadors, they're usually our emerging leaders in the organization, and they can really help cultivate this really positive and authentic ethos of engagement and sharing of ideas, and essentially they're the ones advocating innovation. And what organizations are striving for to sustain competitive advantage is to have an open innovation culture, but we know it's not ephemeral. We can't achieve that overnight. It is something that needs to be nurtured and cultivated and developed. But I think it's just so encouraging that employees themselves, they can accelerate change. They can be hugely impactful in this change transformation process. But going back to Jonathan, and as you can see, he's hugely excited. He is our guru in design thinking, by the way. Design thinking is so powerful, the whole mindset of design thinking. And if organizations can adopt the mindset and co-opt in not only their employees, but their suppliers, their customers into their supply chain, that's really going to have a positive impact on the change process. And what that helps us do, it helps us future-proof those ideas and change before we implement, essentially before we make any major mistakes. So the design thinking mindset is hugely powerful in innovation. All that set aside, I suppose, just in conclusion, what I'd like to share, Porrick, is that communication is so important in driving innovation. Leaders need to be compelling communicators. So how they convey their messages within their business environment, whether it's to their boards, their customers, their suppliers, those stories really require impactful narratives. So to finalize or to conclude, I would say the art of storytelling with compelling narratives that emotionalize content. This is a very powerful skill in persuasive speaking for any leader in mastering successful collaboration and innovation.
Excellent. Thank you, Louise. Some great insights. And you know, I think when you talk about communication, you know, in the virtual world today, I think it has become more imperative of leaders to be able to do that in a way that can relate and connect with the people. And, you know, it is all very much intertwined, and to have that clarity is so important. And just moving on then, I suppose, when we think of that, you know, navigating and that agility, and agile has been a word that's been kind of a buzzword over the last year in navigation, and being agile and thinking of that, the response that people have had, and I suppose we've all experienced COVID, there's something that there was no playbook written for, and we've had to almost respond in a very intense, fast way. So maybe looking at that a bit, Ken, you know, from an innovation leadership perspective, What are you thinking, and what's the view?
Yeah, no, look, I think like mindset, like there's one thing with COVID, we were kind of like nearly forced into this, but if you want to be proactive about innovation within your organization, it definitely is a mindset. It's an agile mindset, adaptable mindset. It's like being able to understand what the transformation vision looks like, it's human nature to be afraid of change. We are, like, I think with COVID, as I said, we've been forced into kind of like working behind screens for the past year. But there's a lot of opportunity, and I think this is the mindset from a navigation and agility perspective. We need to be able to change our mindset, and this is one thing that I love about what we do in Tangent, and it's like one of these softer skills, if you want. It's the idea of not being afraid. It's like, actually, it's like change isn't a bad thing. Actually, the way we like to frame change is like there's opportunity constantly in change, and we're living in, I mentioned it earlier on, we're living in kind of like really transformative times right now, disruptive technology, sustainability, climate change, etc. So there is a massive amount of change happening, and with that change comes opportunity. I'll give an example actually of an organization. We worked with a really big law firm in Dublin recently, and I really was impressed in terms of their mindset. So like the legal profession isn't necessarily a sector that is recognized as a kind of like an innovative sector. They still retain a lot of kind of like the heritage, I guess, if we look at judges and barristers, etc. However, this legal firm recognized the power, if you want, of artificial intelligence, right? And it also recognized the power of people and being able to bring kind of like ideas and how they could potentially use artificial intelligence in their organization. And I absolutely admired this organization. The CEO wanted to create that innovative culture within his organization and let it kind of like seep from the top down, but also from the bottom up. And how they achieved that was they brought Tangent in, first of all, to talk about innovation and creativity in terms of how can the employees within the organization express their kind of like creative ideas, their innovative ideas, and gather those type of innovative ideas as well. In parallel, they brought in an organization that work in artificial intelligence, and then this organization demonstrated the opportunities that AI presents when it comes to kind of like removing the menial tasks, if you want, so that the staff can potentially work on higher value. And when you inspire the staff and when you can motivate the staff to kind of like work on really interesting projects and not necessarily have to go through hundreds of previous cases or whatever they do, let the AI work on this, all of a sudden you've got the recipe for really, really interesting innovations within your organization. You've got, as I said, the top-down culture where the CEO of that organization encouraged staff to come up with ideas, and then a third party, if you want, developing organization to implement those ideas. We are living in a really exciting time right now. And being able to look at this radical collaboration, we do have to navigate it, and we do have to have a vision of where we want to go, but being agile enough to, and being brave enough as well to harness the value of these disruptive technologies and changes. I'm going to finish now. I know my time is up. But we have written in massive letters in Tangent on the wall, and it's a really important message that everybody in Tangent learns. It's a quote by Samuel Beckett. It's ever tried, ever failed, no matter, try again, fail better. We need to be open, and we need not to be afraid of failing. So that's what Jonathan said there just a few moments ago about somebody not wanting to put their name to something. Put your name to it, and if it doesn't work, there should be a culture open enough to kind of, absolutely applaud people for coming up with ideas. If they don't work, reward them. Just make sure that you have an environment where it's okay to fail, in terms of like it's not going to have a negative impact. So I'm going to finish on that.
Okay, thanks, Ken. Yeah, absolutely, and I think the mindset of being open to that change, certainly, hopefully, the pandemic has maybe changed the thinking process around that, and people's ability to be able to be more creative and a faster response for sure. I think, and it's going to create a lot or the need to foster a lot of ideas at leadership levels to be innovative in particular in terms of coming up with solutions for that. So excellent. So thanks for the insight, guys, there and that. So maybe now what we might do is we might open up to questions, and we might come back to Louise at the end just to give an overview of some of the details on this program that's coming. That sounds very exciting, and I'm sure a lot of people may be interested in. So maybe for the next 5 to 10 minutes, we'll open up to questions through the chat. I'm not sure, I don't see any questions myself coming in through the chat on my screen, but if there are questions, maybe anybody who sees them there can raise them or flag them.
Park, can I jump in for a second as well?
Sure, Ken, yeah.
While we're waiting for questions, I just want to say well done to everybody for taking the first steps and joining this webinar today. I remember when I joined, or when I took the first step into looking at this course as well, little did I realize that it was going to be so transformative for my own career. I know Louise is sitting there nodding. It's the funny thing about this is Louise was the course director. Actually, Ruth Noller, Jonathan, you taught me about Ruth Noller as well, and that creative expression, and I've used that on multiple times in multiple organizations, and it has proved, like, just taking that course really opened up my mind. And I guess, what was it, 2 years later, I ended up becoming the CEO of Tangent. So it was a massively transformative journey for me. So well done to everybody who've taken the first steps and just even joining today to find out more.
Okay, thanks, Ken. So just a couple of questions coming in there, and the first question from Rory is, what are the biggest obstacles to creating a culture of innovation? So who'd like to take that one?
I'm happy to start off here. I know there's multiple perspectives on this. I think Jonathan alluded to it earlier on. It's like, I would always find, like, it's the idea of it's not done that way around here, or we don't do things like that around here. It's like we have to start off with creating a culture that's open and, as I said, safe earlier on. So it's like this fixed mindset is what we call it. If we're not kind of like open to change, I think you're going to fail at the very first steps, from my perspective.
Okay, thanks, Ken. Another question that's come in there, interesting one from Catherine. Do you feel collaborative creativity is inhabited by our increased remoteness, i.e. working remotely? And maybe Jonathan, you might take that one.
Jonathan, you're on.
You're mute there, Jonathan.
There we are, the expression of 2020.
We can't go without the webinar without including that, can we?
Yeah.
Okay.
Catherine, I think it is it's a great question. And if you had asked me, just over a year ago, would I like to run workshops online, I would have said no. I get my energy, I get the, I like bringing a group of people together. What I have discovered over the last 14 months is, with careful planning and the right tools, I believe you can be as creative in terms of the collaboration online. For example, I'm running a naming workshop with a company based in Dubai. I think we have had, and we've been doing that with people in Dubai, in the UK. I think we've ended up having a better outcome online. But it did take planning. We use a tool called a whiteboard tool. There's a lot, as I'm sure the official broadcast would say, there's many different versions around. We use something called Concept Board, but Miro is there. By creating a space where people can collaborate both symmetrically while you're running the workshop through something like Zoom, and asymmetrically, I think we've had brilliant results. But we do miss the human touch. You miss going to a drink in the evening, don't you? After you've brought people together, that social side, of course you miss. You can't recreate that. But no, I think with my point is I think we can make it work.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Jonathan. And I think you're right. There's so many new tools that people have had to learn and how to use them, from the Padlets to the Moodles. You know, it's an unending amount of tools out there. So I think it has enlightened us and educated us on those as well. Okay, the next question, interesting, very good question from Tamara. In terms of what would be your recommendations for getting yourself to the table, i.e. getting your ideas to the decision makers? Great question.
I can take that.
Okay, Louise, thanks.
It is a really good question, Tamara. I think it goes back to really succinctly presenting what the opportunity, so what is that idea? What is the opportunity, or indeed what is the challenge? And again, it goes back to the design thinking process, where if we showcase that to our board or our managers, it wouldn't be great to be able to showcase that you've empathized with your user group, you've really defined what the problem is, so that you now can ideate what those solutions look like. So it's bringing a compelling message or compelling idea back to your senior management. It could be board, it could be your board, it could be funders. And when you have managed to do that, go back to your communications piece, think about how you're going to convey that compelling message, and use the art of storytelling. Use your own personality, your words, your passion to really convince and persuade those people to your point of view. So again, it all comes back to, I suppose, scoping out your passion, your message into a compelling narrative that's going to emotionalize the information, and basically that will hopefully help you persuade and negotiate and influence. You will be the influential leader at that table.
Thank you, Louise. And I think absolutely, in terms of, I suppose, this virtual space now, people are becoming more used to delivering sales pitches or presentations or proposals beyond the virtual world, which can be a big change from doing it in front of the people face to face, maybe not getting the vibes or the response that you'd see in a room. So I think it's a new skill set for sure. Okay. Another question, are there challenges in applying these principles in a small organization compared to a larger multinational companies? Good question, Aidan.
Yeah, really good question. I'll take that. Look, I think a principle is a principle irrespective of the size of the organization. If you can demonstrate that you're following a kind of like a design thinking or a design-led process, and to Louise's point there, understanding what your customer needs are, or what the impact of what you're trying to do, and it's aligned to the strategy of the organization. Like, look, I think, like, I presented to organizations of 5 people and organizations of 500 people. I won't say it's exactly the same, but if you apply the same methodologies and same approach, you would want the same outcome. You're bringing people on that journey with you. It's the same kind of like, it's the ability to tell that story. It's the ability to demonstrate a vision. It's showing that you're listening to your company or your customers and achieving the strategic goals of your organization as well. So, I guess in summary, I'd say it's agnostic in terms of the size of the organization. Applying these principles works for small organizations or large organizations.
Yeah, and in terms of maybe just on the preparation now, is there a change in thought in some way to the preparation and the delivery? Would you say, Ken, in relation to that, or do you come with the same mindset as you maybe described?
I'd say same mindset. I once worked for a boss a long time ago, and his piece of advice to me is like, every time you have a meeting with your boss or anytime you have a meeting with a customer, you're always selling yourself. You're always selling that idea. So, like, always keep it high quality. Always keep it kind of like to a standard that you want to be viewed at. You know what I mean? So I'd say it's like 100% all the time. You know.
Okay, thanks. I don't see any more questions coming in. I don't know if anybody wants to come off mic or ask a verbal question. If they do, now's the time to do it. And maybe if we're waiting for any of those, maybe just in relation to this, I suppose, this program that's being offered by Tangent, maybe Louise, you want to give a small bit of detail in relation to the program that's forthcoming?
Thank you. Yes, I'd love to. So look, we're super excited. We are delivering an amazing executive training program, and it commences on the 26th of May. And from a structural perspective and engagement, it's lovely because it's only a 4-week course. So we basically went out to our potential participants and asked them what would work for you, full days, half days, or whatever. So it's going to be delivered over 2 mornings from the end of May, and it'll finish up at the end of June. And what's so unique about the program, Porrick, I mean, I guess I'm biased because I designed it, but it was designed, guys, from best practice, and it was informed by industry research and a working group. So again, we've adopted the design thinking methodology in coming up with a course that the market wants, that will help them survive, sustain, stay ahead of the competition. So it is very unique, and it addresses 3 tenets of change. So the 3 constructs in this course are innovation, leadership, and transformation. So it does address those 3 tenets, which is going to be very beneficial to the skill set of our incoming attendees. I think what's nice about the program is that we're offering a coaching element. So participants will work with their own personal coach. And the key output is that they're actually going to work on their own personal innovation plan. So this will be their tangible output. It's not an assessment. It's not an exam. This is like your own little mini business plan. And again, attendees will apply all the creative and critical thinking to maybe problems that they're trying to overcome in their organizations, or opportunities that they want to scope out and explore. But again, using all of the empathy, the ideation milestones, and obviously we'll be helping you identify. Again, it goes back to implementation. If you want to implement your great idea, so go back to Tamara's point, how do I get the attention of the decision makers, and how can I implement my ideas? Well, it's through the design thinking and through a plan and through your coaching. So you'll be heavily supported. So I think that's a really, really strong output. So it's really good for the individuals and the organizations as well.
Okay, thanks a million, Louise. And I suppose just to summarize, and I'm conscious of time here, if anybody wants to find out more details, you might pop in the link into the chat box there, so people can go on, and any queries they can follow up there. So I don't see any more questions coming in. Jonathan, thanks for sharing Miro.com and conceptboard.com there. So if anybody wants to find those collaborative tools, Jonathan has just shared a couple of links there to them. And I don't know, Aidan, any questions or final words from your perspective?
Sorry, Park.
Sorry.
No, there wasn't. No, it was great discussion. Thanks.
Okay, Jonathan, sorry.
I suppose there has never been a time, have we, where we have gone through such immense change. Yeah, you know, the last 12 months, how many businesses out there really sat there and said, we've got a plan for total lockdown, you know, 3 times, etc. You know, you could probably count them on your hands. And I think that what this course will give you is all the tools that the next time something like this comes curveballing around, you will be so much better to flex. And it takes me back to, you know, Tamara's question about getting your ideas to the decision makers. We want companies which just, you're not fighting to get them to decision makers, that the company has decided that that isn't, you know, that they have a route in. You know, Aidan's point about small or large organizations, I think there's so much. This is the time to hone those skills, to be ready for complex problems, for that VUCA world where it'll all, you know, this was meant to be a 1 in 100 year event. Okay. I somehow doubt it will be.
History will tell in time only, I suppose, Jonathan, and that's the key, isn't it? But I think, yeah, no, absolutely. In terms of your summary comments are nice. I think the key for anyone in industry, and speaking from an industry perspective myself, is you know, to have relevance, to have value that or something that creates value, that you can almost feel that you're always on the beat. You're always on the beat. You're even ahead of that beat. And I think that's the key thing. And I think I love the co-collaboration between industry now and education institution, because sometimes we always hadn't had that as good, but I think we're in a super place right now for that. And again, I thank you for your insights today. Some great insights and great mind-provoking thinking as well. And I think that's the key. We always have to be looking and thinking a bit deeper and coming up with solutions or ideas or whatever it might be. And to have that design mindset is a key piece of that. So with that, I think all of the links have been posted up there in relation to the chat box. And again, thank everybody for participating today. I really hope that you've got insights. I really enjoyed the experience. I've really enjoyed the insights being shared today in the webinar. Thanks to ICBE for facilitating it, and the team in Tangent for giving us those great insights. So with that, if we don't have any more questions, we'll end the session and look forward to meeting you again in the future. And thanks, everybody.
Thank you.